Hello everyone, it's Miss Dennison. Welcome back to the LCM Theater YouTube channel. Today we will be talking about the elements of plot in theater. You should have your team's class notebook ready to go. Under your student notes or class notes, you do have a section called the elements of plot in theater, so you should be able to fill in the blank as we go along today's slideshow. So looking at this graphic, this is probably something that you're familiar with or you may not be totally familiar with, but you definitely recognize it from your English classes. This is what is known as the dramatic structure, but we need to talk about the origins of how we got to this mountain shape. It really started with the classic philosopher Aristotle. He believed that a play should imitate a single whole action, and that whole should have a beginning, middle, and end. So his idea of plot, which was one of the 6 elements of drama, is a unified plot. So think of like an equilateral triangle, and at the bottom left corner is your beginning. The top, the point of the triangle would be your middle, and then of course the bottom right corner would be your end. That is how Aristotle believed all plays should create themselves. But what is plot? Well, it's the order of events that make up a story. It's a series of interconnected events in which every occurrence in the story has a specific purpose. Aristotle was also quoted to say that plot is character revealed by action. So basically, in order for us to learn about these characters and learn about what their purpose is and why we're watching the story, there has to be a plot. If there was no plot, then we would A, not be entertained, but B, what would be the purpose? we would need to have that plot in order and that structure in order for us as an audience to be engaged and in order for us to follow along and learn something from the material. So many playwrights definitely followed Aristotle's unified plot in making sure that there was a nice beginning, a nice middle, and nice end. However, in the 19th century, Gustav Freytag, he was a German playwright and novelist, he started to see these common patterns associated in the plots of stories and novels. And so he was like, you know what, let's break it down a little bit. And he decided to create a diagram to analyze them. And that's where we get the mountain or the dramatic structure that you see today. It's actually called Freytag's Pyramid, but it's been labeled as many different names. Today in class we'll be mentioning it as the pyramid and or the mountain. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the plot points on said mountain. So first and foremost, as many of you know, we have the exposition. This is the first plot point on the pyramid. This is where the characters, setting, and basic information about them is revealed. Usually in the exposition, you can tell, if 2 characters like each other, if they don't like each other, how old everyone is. The setting of the show, is this show gritty and unnerving? Is the show exciting? Is the show, happy and light and fun? You'll be able to tell that usually within the first scene or the stage directions in the script. Sometimes the exposition is spoken and sometimes it is included in those stage directions. And remember, those stage directions are those written things in parentheses that we don't necessarily say, but they essentially guide us on what to do and which path our story should go on. So here we have Freytag's Pyramid, and you can see where the exposition is located down at the bottom in the beginning of the pyramid. So after the exposition, we usually have the inciting incident. This is the event that sets the story in motion and makes the rest of the story possible. As you all know, without a story, without some sort of conflict, you typically don't have a good story. And this inciting incident is usually the beginning of that conflict. It answers the question, what was it that pulled everything in motion? Why are we watching this story? Why are we watching these characters? And how are they involved with each other? And this inciting incident usually happens in the first or second scene of the show. As you see on the pyramid, the exposition goes on a straight line, but notice that the inciting incident is the breaking point or the corner of that pyramid. So it's what causes a shift or a change in where the action is headed. Many of you are probably familiar with this one. This is called the rising action. This is the main part of the action, and it's what moves the plot along. This is also where the complications arise. Why? Because the conflict has been established. So this is where you start to see the conflict really affect the individuals involved in the story. And then once we've hit that inciting incident, you can see that rising action working its way up, taking its sweet time to get to the buildup of the climax or the top of the pyramid. The climax is the most exciting or intense part of the story, the big OMG moment. This is a turning point where things have to change for better or for worse. The best way that I am able to remember the climax of the story is this is the point of no return for the character, meaning once the climax happens, that character is changed either for better or for worse and can never go back to the way things were in the beginning. So as you see, climax is at the top of the pyramid. A lot of people tend to believe that climax and conflict are the same thing, when in fact, as you can tell in the pyramid, they're not. The conflict is what causes the climax. The inciting incident, or the conflict, is what establishes that turning point for the character. So once we reach the falling action, this is where all of the events following the climax have happened. And what these events involve or entail are reactions to the climax. And all of these events are moving us towards the resolution or the end of the play. So you can see where falling action is located, and notice the different in sizes, the different lengths between the rising action and the falling action. If you remember in our notes back in the first 6 weeks, the rising action, which happens in Act 1, Act 1 is typically longer than Act 2 because in Act 1 you've got exposition, inciting incident, rising action, and sometimes climax of the show all happening in one act. Therefore, Act 2 happens at a pretty rapid pace because you just simply have the falling action of the show followed by the resolution. The resolution, or the denouement, is the end of the story. Denouement is a French word that literally means the action of untying. Or it's a verb meaning to untie. So we are untying, unraveling the events to create the ending, right? We're tying up loose ends of, all the different, all the different storylines that are connected to this plot. And then the conflict should be resolved either in a good way or a bad way. It does not always have to end with rainbows and butterflies. Sometimes it can end tragically. And as you can see here, the resolution slash denouement is located at the end of the triangle. So even though we have Freytag's pyramid here, we are still following Aristotle's unified plot with the beginning, the exposition, the middle, the climax, and the end, the resolution. The falling action, rising action, and inciting incident are just ways for us to really dig deep into the plot and analyze the character stories. So on your notes sheet, you do have an exit ticket associated with today's notes. There are only 2 questions that you will need to answer. What was the name of the philosopher that considered plot as an element of drama? And then name one takeaway from today's lesson. This is something that you learn in English class all the time. So what was something that you learned from this lesson that you had not already heard before? That's it from me, guys. Be sure to check out your assignments on Teams that are connected to plot structure. And that's all for now. Talk to you soon.